these globalists are masters at incrementalism.
Mm.
They never roll it all out or too much of it out at one time. Like you say, they know that would wake people up.
That's right.
It's the proverbial frog in the pot of water. You just turn that heat up a little notch at a time, right?
Yeah.
And they're masters at this. And
Yep.
so people never really wake up until that water is boiling and their flesh is melting off.
That's right, because if they turned around tomorrow and said, we're all going to get the quantum dot tattoo in our right hand, and we have to
Exactly.
use that to
Right,
barter,
right.
trade, sell, well, that might wake up some Christians.
It just might do that.
The entire contents of this podcast and website are based upon the opinions of Tammy Garcia and her guests, unless otherwise noted. The information on this podcast is not intended to replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified healthcare professional and is not intended as medical advice. It is intended as a sharing of knowledge and information from the research and experience of Tammy Garcia and her guests. This is the Naturally Inspired Podcast, coming to you from our 1890 homestead in Johnstown, Colorado. I'm Tammy, and I want to thank you for joining us. Let's get started and help people feel good so they can do what they love for longer.
Today on the Naturally Inspired Podcast, Leo Hohmann is joining us. Leo is a veteran investigative reporter and an author whose recent book, Stealth Invasion, spent the majority of 2017 among Amazon.com's top 10 books about immigration policy. He has spent decades researching and writing about education, immigration, crime, politics, and religion. His articles have appeared at WND.com, Front Page Magazine, Jihad Watch, The Drudge Report, Canon 12, Technocracy News, TheReligionOfPeace.com, and many other websites and publications. Hohmann has been interviewed by dozens of local and national radio hosts, including Laura Ingraham of Fox News, Daniel Horowitz of Conservative Review, Larry Elder, George Norrie on Coast to Coast, John B. Wells of Caravan to Midnight, and Jan Markle of the Olive Tree Ministries. His mission has always been to fearlessly report truths about the great issues of our time and connect the dots wherever they may lead. He also seeks to report issues in historical context so his readers can grasp the greater meaning of today's news. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Naturally Inspired Podcast with Leo Hohmann. It's an honor to have you on the Naturally Inspired Podcast. I've been following your articles for a while now. I'm new to you, but it's been a few months, since the whole fiasco has started.
Yes.
That's how I found you. Desperate for information I was. So I ended up stumbling upon you. I'm not even sure how, but I'm sure grateful that I have, because you don't sugarcoat things.
No, I try to put the truth out there as plain spokenly and clearly as possible. Yes. A little bit about my background, I guess you might want.
Yes, please.
I spent about 27, 28 years in working at mainstream newspapers, local newspapers as a reporter, editor, mostly in the Atlanta region, but also a stint in North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina area. I was canceled from the newspaper industry in 2018 because I wanted to do some real journalism on an issue that was not permitted. The Atlanta Braves were moving their stadium from Fulton County to Cobb County, and the newspaper I worked for was in Cobb County, and they didn't want the people to find out the real ramifications cost-wise in terms of future tax hikes and stuff like that of welcoming the Braves to Cobb County. It was, a big chamber of commerce, balloons and lollipops gig. Everyone was just wanted to focus on the, the sexy part of having a
Right.
professional Major League Baseball franchise. But so we parted ways, and I ended up working at WorldNet Daily, and writing about immigration. And then they became insolvent, laid off 75% of their staff. And I basically became an independent journalist at that point. I've been doing it for about 3 years now. And I've written a lot about immigration and what's going on with that. And when the whole COVID thing hit, I really saw that as the most imminent threat to our freedoms in this country. The way it was being used, I never fell for it for a second, dating straight back to March of 2020.
Yep.
Even in February, I could see the way the media was latching onto this thing and creating this palpable fear in the population. And whenever you have the entire mainstream media latching onto one issue and all reporting it exactly the same way, that's a red flag that what you're getting is not news, it is propaganda.
Very interesting. And when you say reporting it the same way, I've seen these videos where it's a montage of newscaster after newscaster,
Yes.
like the phrase "build back better."
Yes, and we know where that comes from.
Yes.
The World Economic Forum and the Great Reset.
Exactly.
And you've got Joe Biden repeating that mantra almost daily. We can build it back better. Well, if you have to build something back, what is it? What is the connotation there? You're going to destroy it. You're going to have to destroy what you already have. And that is the purpose for COVID. That is the entire purpose. It has nothing to do with the COVID response, I should say.
Right.
It has nothing to do with public health and everything to do with destroying the long-standing, very successful economic and social order of this country so they can build it back in their eyes better.
Right.
But to us, it's going to be a nightmare, because what they want to build back in place of our existing system of capitalism and free enterprise and individual freedom, and I emphasize the word individual, is going to be something along the lines of the Chinese model.
Yes, I agree with you.
Which is state capitalism, World Economic Forum. They promote on their own website. They say they are the world's premier voice for what? Public-private partnerships.
Yeah.
That's where you have corrupt big corporations jumping in bed with big government and picking winners and losers, punishing their competitors, and what have we seen happen during this entire COVID event? Small businesses being put under, struggling, being put under onerous new rules and regulations that they can never sustain themselves under, long and have long-term profitability. Restaurants where, they're having to eliminate half of their seating and space people out, go every other booth and seat people. That's not a successful business model.
Well, restaurants have such a small margin of profit. People don't know that.
Right. Yeah. Right. And so we see the targets, the top 15 billionaires in America since COVID hit 15 months ago. The top 15 most wealthy billionaires in this country have increased their wealth by 50%.
Wow.
If you go to the top 65 billionaires, it's about 18%. So the more wealthy they are, the more they've benefited. Those are the people who are feasting off of COVID and the new normal system that's being implemented right under our noses.
So is there space for you in media right now? Everything you just said?
No, I mean, a year or two after that experience I told you at that one newspaper, I tried to get a job at another newspaper in the Atlanta area, a smaller paper, which I had worked at years ago. Okay, so they knew me.
Right.
I was the assistant editor at that time, and I applied for the top editor's job, and they hired me. They announced it to the staff, and I actually started working with the retiring editor, because who I was going to replace.
Right.
And a week before I was supposed to start, I get a certified letter in the mail saying, due to a review of some of your recent online work, we have decided to rescind the job offer. And they were probably talking about my book, Stealth Invasion, the articles that I wrote at WND, WorldNet Daily. And so that's why I say I've been canceled. And this was in a county, Carroll County, that is repeatedly referred to as the reddest county in Georgia.
Wow.
So here you have the reddest county in a red state won't hire someone like me because we report the truth about immigration, vaccines, and other issues.
Right.
Other issues deemed too controversial for them. And someone with 28 years of experience is verboten, now totally eliminated from that industry, and has you might as well put a yellow star on my forehead and say, you are one of the unclean, unwashed ones who is not allowed into this industry. So if you are a truth teller, you are basically banned from mainstream media. People don't understand that. All the way from the top, they realize, how corrupt the Washington Post, the New York Times, and NPR and these outfits are, but they don't realize that it really has trickled down all the way to the local level. And just like everything else, the New World Order, people call it the deep state. But it's not really that deep anymore. It's right in your face. It's right in at the local level now, where you in your community, where you reside. Your local hospital and your local doctor's offices are following protocols set by the World Health Organization, for heaven's sakes. This is a United Nations corrupt agency. They're setting policy for how you, Joe American, is going to be treated at your local hospital or doctor's office. And what was that protocol? Don't focus on treatment when it comes to COVID.
Right.
Don't focus on treatment.
Nope.
In fact, we're going to poo-poo the best treatments we had available, which were these antimicrobials, ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. They have fantastic records of knocking out COVID if you give them soon enough and don't wait till the person's on a respirator or a ventilator.
Let's talk about
that was the policy, right? We just stand back, we tell people mask up, social distance, close the non-essential businesses, and wait for a vaccine. That was the entire strategy from the World Health Organization, followed to a T here in the United States, from the federal level all the way down to the states and localities.
Yes, I would add, and test. Test,
right. with a very dubious form of test.
Right. You mentioned the United Nations. In one of your articles I was reading that you mentioned Agenda 2030.
Sure.
Now, this in previous, say 2 years ago or whatever, 2030 was a conspiracy theory, Agenda 2030. What are you talking about? But the United Nations...
Conspiracy theory, that is the label used by the ignorant.
Yes. Yes. Yep. I totally agree with you. And it's just a form of gaslighting, really. It's a way to discredit whatever is being said just by using a derogatory term. But let's just focus on the data. That's what I want to say to those people. Let's just talk about the issue.
The data and the documents. Right.
Yep. And so Agenda 2030, part of their agenda is affordable life-saving vaccines for all.
I believe that's goal 3.8, if I'm not mistaken. Right. They have 17 sustainability goals, and within each goal they have sub goals, which they call targets. So goal number 3, target 8, is affordable life-saving vaccines, and the kicker is for all. So what if you don't want to have and affordable, which we know it's free. It's not just affordable, it's free, right?
Right.
For this new coronavirus, it's a brand new vaccine that has never been tested beyond 2 or 3 months on as far as its impact on the human body. And they're saying it's, quote, safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. That's all you hear over and over, the mantra of the mainstream media and the corrupt medical establishment led by Dr. Fauci, who in my view is a criminal, an international criminal. And that's who people are taking their advice from, rather than doing their own research and finding these other doctors, which we talked about off the air, such as Dr. McCullough and Dr. Sucharit Bhakti, who is another hero of mine. He's the retired scientist from Germany. Have you seen some of his presentations?
Yes, I have.
Yes. Yeah. And he's predicting that doom is the word he's using for people who get this vaccine. And if you got the first shot, he's saying, don't get the second. If you've got the second, don't get a third.
Yes.
You know, the more you receive, the greater your chances of getting severely harmed from this.
I want to talk about this idea of like a vaccine dependent society.
Well, that seems to be what's come down from the Agenda 2030, isn't it? And the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Gavi Global Vaccine Alliance, which Bill Gates funds. They're all about vaccine. Well, what about treatments? You know, they're, like we said, you know, do we just ignore treatments and focus on vaccines when vaccines have I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I mean, there are certain vaccines that I think it would be difficult to argue against the fact that they've been pretty successful, polio being one of them. But this is so much different. This is not polio. People say, older people, I just met an older woman the other night who looked maybe about late 70s, early 80s, very intelligent sounding woman, but she was completely confused. She couldn't draw the distinction between this vaccine and the polio era. She said, well, I remember growing up where we had to line up and raise our sleeve for the polio vaccine. I had to tell her, ma'am, this is not the polio vaccine. We're dealing with, number one, an illness that is over 99% recoverable from. If you're 18 or younger, this coronavirus, if you catch it, you have a 99.998% chance of recovering. So why are we vaccinating children now?
Yes.
And telling people that their kids can't go back to school or go back to the university campus unless they've been vaccinated with this. It's not with this experimental vaccine. And I had to tell her, she apparently wasn't aware because she's intelligent, but she watches the wrong sources. She watches mainstream news, so she only gets a set narrative, which is just littered with lies. And another thing she was not aware of is that it is still experimental. It's only been granted, as you know, Tammy, emergency use authorization, not full FDA approval, which is typically a 10 or 12 year process. And I don't know how that's going to play out. I wouldn't be surprised if they ram it through in a year or less.
I'm worried about that too.
Which would be unprecedented, and then will not be accepted by people like us, the vaccine hesitant. That's where I would put myself in that category. I will wear that label proudly. Yes. Vaccine hesitant, because we don't have all the facts yet. They try to tell us we do, but that is a lie. That is a lie. And why, if this vaccine is so good for us, do they need to promote it 24/7 with lies? That is the question we should be asking. And
bribe us to take it.
Yes, and bribe us, correct. Not only do they propagandize us 24/7, but then they're trying to buy us off. That is not the actions of a legitimate vaccine maker, a legitimate vaccine administrator. So we have a lot of questions, and until those are answered, I would advise anyone to be very cautious. Let's just say, and if you're a mother or father of children, I'm sorry, you're absolutely crazy if you send your child to get this vaccine.
Yeah, I agree with you. What an interesting point of view about the term vaccine. I noticed that they added an additional definition to vaccines where it included not having a virus as part of the actual vaccine itself, right? Because that's how we understand vaccines. Like you get a little bit of the virus, your body triggers the ability to fight it off, and you build up immunity. That's how the general public understands vaccines. They don't understand gene therapy.
Right.
So they added this additional definition to wrap this gene therapy in a comfortable blanket so that we would accept
exactly.
it.
You are spot on, Tammy, because from my understanding, this gene therapy has been around for about 5-6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been trying for the last few years to get the FDA to sign off on it and give approval of these gene therapies. Moderna, for instance, started off as a chemotherapy company where they were going to use gene therapy to administer cancer treatments. And they never could get FDA approval. Well, along comes coronavirus. We have a national emergency declared. President Trump then jumps on board and enacts Operation Warp Speed. We got to get a vaccine, and we've got to get it as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
and that was, to me, the biggest mistake he could have ever made, and probably will go down in history as the biggest mistake of his administration, which I was generally supportive of.
Same.
But oh my goodness, that was a horrible decision. And because the big pharma was ready at the waiting to have this to take advantage of this declared national emergency of a pandemic, global pandemic, to get their gene therapy approved by the FDA. And they not only get it approved, but they get it approved as a vaccine, which allows them what? 2 different advantages that they never would have had otherwise. They have the possibility of getting it mandated. Number one, no other treatment can you get mandated, no other medical treatment, right? Only vaccines have the possibility of being mandated. And number two, they are released from all liability from any harm that their product causes in humanity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that brings us back to kind of what we were talking about off the air with Bill Gates, right? This is his business model to make it so that his product is the one and only choice for everybody by paying for regulation to promote his product and getting rid of all his competitors, because gene therapy could be a very competitive field.
Absolutely. And so Bill Gates, he's the #1 biggest private funder of the World Health Organization. I believe he's the biggest private funder of the CDC as well.
Yes. Yep.
And so you're right. He buys off the regulators, and then he goes about punishing. He uses regulators then to punish his competition. And so who do we see? The two, it's interesting, very interesting to me, to see that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and the AstraZeneca vaccine, it's okay for the media to criticize those. It's okay for the government to enact a pause on the J&J jab. And several governments, I think a dozen or more, have discontinued the AstraZeneca jab.
Yeah, I think we're up to 21.
Right. And so, but Bill Gates is invested in what? The mRNA vaccines. Now, I'm not saying J&J or AstraZeneca are safe. Please don't misunderstand me.
Yeah, no.
But they're no more safe probably than the other two, but the other two are the ones that have the backing of Bill Gates. So we must promote those. Those are off limits and above reproach.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
No media can criticize those. If you do, you're labeled a conspiracy theorist.
That's right.
If you're a doctor with tremendous credentials like Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. Sukarit Bhakti,
Yep.
Scientist, he's one of the foremost scientists in the world, recently retired from Germany.
Yep.
You cannot criticize them. You're suddenly erased from Facebook, erased from YouTube.
Yeah. Even some of these, very pro-vaccine type people like Dr. Yearden, he used to be the CEO of Pfizer.
Right.
What's the other one? Geert Vanderbos.
Geert Vanderbos, right.
These are people who've been at the pinnacle of vaccine promotion and development for decades.
Yes.
They're coming out and saying, oh, no, back away. And yet now, it just marches on. They're now considered crackpots.
Right. It's interesting, isn't it? How you can have this distinguished 30 or 40-year career, but then suddenly you wake up one morning and you just suddenly became a crackpot.
Yep.
That's the same process that people like me in the field of journalism have been exposed to, been thrown up against. Right. So it's going on throughout the world in all different professions, really. And I've been warning people that, hey, you can say that you're just going to ride this out. I know so many friends of mine who work for, big corporations. They work in a climate of fear.
Yeah.
They're afraid of their own shadow. They're people who voted for Trump or whatever.
Yeah.
Don't want to get vaccinated, whatever.
Right.
But they're afraid to speak their mind. They think they can ride it out. No, this new world order, this great reset, whatever you want to call it, is coming for you.
Yeah.
So you better stop. You better stand and make your stand right now.
I agree.
Before it's just, too late.
Exactly. A good businessman, tends to feed all of his businesses. You know what I'm saying? Like you invest in things that go along the line with your business. And that's exactly what Bill Gates is doing, because not only is he in the vaccine business, okay, but he's in the technology business too. So he's going to benefit from this wonderful idea he has of vaccine passports. Now, I started seeing this ID 2020 in the airports years ago. These subtle little signs up, ID 2020.
Oh, the real ID, yeah.
Yes. And
that started really not long after 9/11.
That's right. He's been in the works with it for quite some time, this whole kind of surveillance health combination. And so he is not only going to benefit from the sale of the vaccine, but then everyone in his world is going to need this vaccine passport surveillance system that he also benefits from. Okay. And then he's also heavily invested in companies like Monsanto and junk food, which makes you sick. Right. So he's
now investing in lab grown fake meat.
Right.
He's heavily invested, as we spoke off the air about, in what? Media companies. And so he buys them off. He's put more than $250 million into companies like the Washington Post, NPR, the BBC, the Atlantic. The Columbia Journalism Review wrote the definitive article on this about a year and a half ago. People should look it up online. Columbia Journalism Review, which is kind of the trade publication for the mainstream media. That's where they go to read about themselves. And somehow this mainstream publication, Columbia Journalism Review, was allowed to do an excellent article on Bill Gates' funding of major media companies and how he literally buys favorable media coverage on the quote issues he cares about. And they said that the 250 million is probably actually just a pittance of the actual amount he's put into these companies, because some of it is not really trackable, especially if they're private media companies. So and they give the full list. Gannett is another huge one he invests money in. That Gannett is the nation's largest publisher of local newspapers.
Right.
And so, the chances are your local newspaper may be owned by Gannett Corporation. So that is not a reliable source of news. What you're reading there is propaganda.
Right.
And it goes all the way up to the large publications like the New York Times and the Washington Post and NPR, et cetera, et cetera. The Canadian public broadcasting system, what is the CBC, I believe it's called. That was another one. So, I mean, this is global in scale, how he's bought off the global media.
Yes.
And you were talking about this ID system.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's tie that back again to its origin. The United Nations Agenda 2030, if you look at goal 16.9, what does it say? Create a legal identity for all people, including birth registration.
Wow.
Birth registration, get them all registered with a global ID system. So, and Bill Gates is one of the biggest funders of the United Nations as well. So, and promoters, he promotes it ad nauseum.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Even more than the money he puts into it, he is a big promoter of it through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and his various other myriad organizations.
Yes. I use a website called Little Sis. I don't know if you've ever been on that. It's Little Sis. It's the opposite of Big Brother. It is a great resource where you can plug in someone's name and it brings up all their affiliations.
Oh, okay.
And so if go on there and
I'll have to write that down. Little Sis.
Little Sis, LIL. I can't remember if it's .org or .com or what, but you'll find it. If you put in Little Sis, the opposite of Big Brother, that's kind of their tagline.
Gotcha.
You'll find all his affiliations, and he has another whole company with the quantum dot tattoo.
I've heard of that. Yes.
Yeah. So this is a phased system.
Yes.
Where they can't roll it all once at a time because we'll freak out. So
you are so correct. I tell people in my audience that all the time, that the global left, the globalists, and this is an issue, by the way, not Democrat, Republican.
No,
it's globalism versus
freedom.
Freedom. Exact. Good word. But what I always tell people is these globalists are masters at incrementalism. They never roll it all out or too much of it out at one time, like you say. They know that would wake people up. It's the proverbial frog in the pot of water. You just turn that heat up a little notch at a time, right? Yeah. And they're masters at this. And so people never really wake up until that water is boiling and their flesh is melting off.
That's right, because if they turned around tomorrow and said, we're all going to get the quantum dot tattoo in our right hand, and we have to use that to barter, trade, sell, well, that might wake up some Christians.
It just might do that. but instead, what's happening? They roll it out, like you said, one little baby step at a time.
That's right.
And that is so devious and so deceptive that they're able to not only avoid the uprising of Christians all over the planet, they actually get some of the most prominent leaders of Christianity to hop on board and help them do this. Yeah. I was extremely disappointed in Franklin Graham.
Me too.
He is working with the Joe Biden regime to promote this experimental gene therapy that they are calling a vaccine. Same with Pat Robertson, 700 Club. The list goes on. Andy Stanley. The list goes right on. All of these evangelical Christian leaders working to lead their flock over the cliff and fall right into the abyss, in my opinion.
I agree with you. That was actually something I have written down here that I wanted to talk to you about. The vaccine deaths are over 4,000 now, right? I think we're approaching...
That's as of May 1st.
I know. So
they
I
were
think
up
we're
to
4,200.
4,100, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so, and not only that, but all one has to do is get on a forum
Yes.
And holy moly, I mean, you're going to see stuff. People aren't afraid to post pictures of what's going on with them, and they're telling their stories. And then, of course, these forums get shut down. But I've been on enough of them for long enough to see people's stories. And so why in the heck do you think, especially with people like Dr. Peter McCullough and, you know, Dr. Lee Merritt, who I've interviewed, Dr. Scott Jensen, who I've interviewed, the list goes on and on. These are reputable, upstanding folks here.
Right.
They're all saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. And yet there's a church in my little town, not too far from my little town, that has a vaccine promotion on their marquee. Come line up and get your vaccine.
I've seen it, similar things around here. Yeah.
Yeah. What is going on with churches promoting it?
They're deceived. They're very deceived. And, you know, you look at various passages in the Bible that talked about the, you know, quote, end times.
Yeah.
One of them is Matthew 24, when the apostles asked Jesus, you know, what would be the signs of the end and your coming back and the end of the age, I guess is how they worded it. And how did he answer that? He gave them actually a quite in-depth answer of what we should look for. But if I had to sum it up, I would say 2 words: deception, mass deception, more deceptive than any other time in human history going on. So deception on the one hand, and on the other, persecution. He said, do not be surprised when they hate you, because they hated me first.
Right.
So you're going to have increasing Christian persecution and incredible deception going on. And that is the hallmark of the last days, according to Jesus' words in Matthew 24.
Yeah, I can't help but think every time I see another one of these high-profile people come out and push the vaccine, it just burns in my mind. False prophet.
Some of them you expected it. Yeah, some you expected it from, like, you know, Pope Francis. He is a Marxist at heart. He believes in global governance. He came out and said that we should have universal vaccines and global governance. So he's just right out there. You got to at least hand it to him there. He's not, you know, he's not beating around the bush.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
But these others like Franklin Graham, you know, so conservative and right-leaning and whatnot, and then to come out in favor of pushing, not just even saying, you know, I leave it up to you, it's personal choice, whatever. He came out and said, if Jesus were alive on the planet today, he would get the vaccine and he would promote the vaccine.
I know. I just about puked when I heard that.
And he doubled down. He doubles down on it almost every day lately. He's been putting something on his Facebook page about it.
Wow.
I believe he's getting paid by the government.
Yes. Well, and that's just it. There's a model that a lot of people aren't familiar with, and I see it in almost everything now. So what it is you get paid for your audience. Okay. So if you have a popular audience on YouTube and say, you know, you're a YouTuber and you've got 1 million people or more on your following, then all of a sudden you become a commodity yourself. So you can basically do whatever you want once you have that following. So we see it. My son's a martial artist and my daughter's a dancer. And, you know, there's coming up in the ranks in those professions. You've got to go to all the competitions. You've got to work your way up. Not anymore, though. See, if you're a YouTuber and you make some dance videos, then all of a sudden choreographers and stuff want to latch onto you because of your audience, even though you can't dance to save your life.
And how do you get a large audience on YouTube? Now, maybe this doesn't apply to just a dancer, but it could, because even celebrities now, they're very outspoken politically, right?
Yes.
So how do you get these large audiences? What's happening in America is we are implementing the Chinese model. which is based on a social credit system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Those who obey the government and are good little global citizens,
Yep.
they get promoted, they get the big audiences. Those who those who are dissident voices and have opinions that oppose the narrative being promoted by the government and the big corporations, they get punished and removed from YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or whatever platform it is. So we don't realize it yet. Mm-hmm. And this is what Lee Merritt calls brilliantly, I think, fifth generation warfare.
Yes.
Where, as opposed to fourth generation warfare, where you don't know, you're in a war, but you don't know who the enemy is because they disguise themselves as in regular clothes, as regular normal citizens during the day.
Yeah.
And then at night, under the cover of darkness, they attack you. That's fourth generation warfare. But what these globalists use very effectively is fifth generation warfare. And it involves economic war, removing people like me from their jobs, punishing them that way. And information war, the propaganda machine through the, as we've already discussed, the owned and occupied mainstream media. So fifth generation warfare is you not only don't know who your enemy is, you don't even know you're in a war.
That's right.
Brilliant, isn't it?
Yes, that's exactly how it is. Most people they still think as long as they take their shot, we're going back to normal.
Yes.
They still think that.
And I tell those people, if you're getting the shot because you honestly think that it's going to protect you health-wise, while I disagree with you, I can at least respect your opinion, your decision. But if you're getting that shot because of what you just said, because you think that's going to be the ticket to get you returning to getting your freedoms returned to you, I don't respect that decision, and you are part of the problem.
Yes.
Why? Yeah. Because by you deciding based on that factor, you are admitting that you accept totalitarianism and you're going to accept it without so much as a whimper of resistance.
Yes.
You want to be allowed. I talked to people and I said, well, why'd you get the vaccine? Oh, I wanted to be allowed to travel.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Trips.
You wanted to be allowed? Since when do we get allowed to have freedom of movement in a so-called free society? Freedom of movement is a bedrock fundamental human right in any free society. You take that away and you are no longer a free part of the quote unquote free world.
Yes. One of my most detested statements over this last year and a half is, well, at least they let us.
Exactly. They let us, they allow us.
Yes.
This is how we live now in this country.
Yeah. I want to pull my hair out. Like, what do you mean at least they let you? What?
It is really astonishing how people have laid down and swallowed this whole, this fear mongering, and it's all been brought about by the fear mongering. Yeah. If you scare people, I say that they want people to be sick, scared, confused, and broke.
Bingo.
If they can get us sick, scared, confused, and broke, they can do anything to us.
That's right.
Because you don't intimidate, you don't snatch freedoms away from people who are healthy, confident, clear-minded, and middle class.
That's right. That's right. And they also extort us on a regular basis with our children, right? Extortion is now part of our society, like, because you're afraid, you don't want your kid to suffer the ramifications for what you say or do. So, these parents are running scared from teachers, and we're seeing an uprising. You wrote about it a little bit, about a parental uprising, where they're taking over school boards now and stuff. Can you speak on that a little bit? Do you think that has some movement there? Do you think that could be a bit of a catapult to change things through our education system right now?
Well, I think it does. I think it will continue to gain traction. And I think the only way we can win our freedoms, continue to be a free republic, is to, make our voices heard at the local level.
Yeah.
I've given up on the federal government. That is a hopeless cesspool of whatever you want to call it. Trump called it the swamp. I think that was too nice of a term.
Yep.
And the state level is not a whole lot better in most states, I have to say. But the local level, and it's bad at the local level. I'm not saying it isn't.
Right.
But we have the best chance of taking it back at the local level.
Right.
Sometimes a lot of these school boards and county commissions have one or two good people on there, but they just don't have the majority. So you get one or two more elected and boom, you've got the majority. Okay. So this is what needs to happen. Good people need to run for office, but not just, it can't be because I think a lot of people run for office for the wrong reasons for these local boards. I really do. You can't do it because you want prestige. You obviously don't do it for the money, although you can make money if you rise to, say, the chairman and you get kickbacks under the table. That is the wrong reason. But people like us, just solid, patriotic, God-fearing Americans, need to run for the right reasons and get themselves or friend of theirs who is like-minded on these boards. And until we do that, we are going to be increasingly, sadly, slaves.
Yes, I think that the education system is a great place to start. I pulled my kids out of they were in a charter school, and it started out really great. And then they had a turnover of administration. The new administration came straight from the public district, right? And immediately everything changed, immediately. And so I pulled my kids out, and I saw what was happening 4 years ago. Right. I saw all this ushering in of all this new language.
Yes. Critical race theory.
Yes.
LGBTQ stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just saw it. I saw the writing on the wall, and I tried to fight it, but just couldn't get the numbers behind me.
Right.
People, again, feeling extorted. People told me they were afraid that teachers would take it out on their kids.
I encounter the same thing all the time. I'll give you an example. A neighbor of mine, their grandchild, I'm sorry, was spending a lot of time with them because the parent, I guess it was like a 2 or 3 week period. They had COVID, or they didn't really have COVID, but they were exposed, so they had to go into the quarantine.
Right.
So for a couple of weeks, the grandchild spent time at the grandparents' house and was learning through the computer with this was last year, I think, and with the distance learning.
Right.
Well, when the grandparent gazed at the computer or walked by, whatever, and they opened class every morning with Black Lives Matter, the logo of it, and like saluting Black Lives Matter.
Wow.
This is a public school, here in Georgia. I said, well, what did you do? Did you go to complain to the principal and the school board, the chairwoman of the school board? No, I'm afraid that they would take it out against my granddaughter. They would have retribution against my granddaughter, and she would fail get failing grades.
Yep.
I'm telling you, it's there. It's palpable. We live in a climate of fear.
Yep.
So in that sense, I tell people, if that's where you're at, again, you have conceded without so much as a whimper that you live in a communist country.
Yep.
Because only in communist countries are you afraid to speak your mind when you know what you're saying is correct and true. And even if someone doesn't agree with it, that it at least is worthy of being heard out. So, they punish you economically in this social credit Chinese-based model. But they also, it's more than just economic punishment. It's the feeling that you are less than. that your opinion does not matter and is not worthy of being heard in the public square.
That's right, because you're just stupid.
Yes. Yes.
And you don't have the wherewithal to know better.
Right.
So we're going to do your thinking for you.
Bingo.
Right.
Yep.
So this is a quote from one of your articles. Everything about modern society discourages independent thinking. Talk about that for me.
Again, doesn't that go back to the education system?
Totally.
I mean, from day one, from the day you enroll your child in kindergarten, you are offering that child up to the propagandists, the paid professional propagandists. Where do they work? The majority of them in education and in media. Mm-hmm. So not only do you get indoctrinated K through 12, then you go to send them to a public university. Mm-hmm. Amazingly, miraculously, some children come out of that K-12 education with their brains still intact.
Yeah.
Very few go through another 4 years of college. I've seen so many, Tammy, come from good, solid Christian homes, smart as a whip, real mm-hmm. intelligent children. Mm-hmm. They somehow, like I said, managed to get through high school mm-hmm. without losing their minds to the left.
Yep.
And then those professors get a hold of them in college, in university, and it's a whole new, it's ratcheted up to a whole new level.
Oh, yeah.
And they end up being leftists by the time, usually by the time their sophomore year.
Seen it over and over again.
Yeah.
And the fascinating thing is that parents are paying for their children to get turned against them.
This is what I've been telling people. Why are you complaining to me about the state of America mm-hmm. when you have continued to help fund the takeover of America?
Yes.
Not only by sending your kid to public school, but actually we don't have a choice about that, right? Because they tax us whether we send our kid there or not.
Yeah. To me, it was worth it. I don't care. Take my taxes. I'm taking my kids out.
Right. Same here. But you send them to these universities and pay 10, 20, 30, 40,000, 50 even a year for them to finish the job that the high school wasn't able to complete and completely occupy your child's mind with leftist, ideological, hate American ideologies.
Yep.
Then you go to Disney World once a year and spend your money there. You buy Coca-Cola products and you watch movies from Netflix and, buy everything you own from Amazon. We are funding the takeover of America.
Yeah.
The only thing these big corporations understand and universities understand is the almighty dollar.
That's right.
We have to take that away from them if we're ever going to win this information war. And it is a war.
Yes.
I said in my book, in the preface to my book, which came out, Stealth Invasion, came out in January 2017, that I've actually mentioned this, what Lee merits. I didn't call it that, fifth generation warfare, because I wasn't aware of that term in 2017.
Yep.
But I described it exactly how she did, that we're in a war, but the people on our side don't realize they're in a war.
Yep.
And I actually called it World War III. I started the preface of the book, World War III has begun.
Yeah.
That was in January 2017, December 2016, actually.
Yeah.
And so it is a war. We have to realize we're in it. We have to know what tools and weapons we have to fight back, the biggest being financial, but that's not the only one. We also have to speak out in vocally in the public square at every opportunity. Never shy away, never back down. And until we get the gumption to do that, we're going to continue to lose.
Yeah. Standing on the truth, right?
Yes.
I mean, you can't go wrong when you stand on the truth. And even if you're unsure at the time, but something is wrong, it's still better to say something than nothing at all.
Right.
Right?
Right.
my last question before I let you go is, what's the best outcome that you're hoping for? You know, I feel like a lot of people feel like we're on a sinking ship here, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, there's no hope. But I also think that they want us to feel that way, right? Because it's much easier. It's easier to usher out these new systems of AI and technology and all this stuff to fix a broken system, right? Where there's no hope. So they want us to feel like there's no hope in
I
what we've
agree.
known, right?
I
So,
agree.
so what is the hope here? Like, what every person's personally responsible for their own actions. And I believe that it's really simple. It's about non-compliance.
Yes. Yes. I said early on that if people would have just taken off their masks, this entire COVID thing would have broken down.
Yep.
This entire COVID takeover strategy. And it is exactly that. If people are listening to me and saying, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist, go listen to Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum.
Yep.
Read his book, COVID-19 and the Great Reset, and you will hear it straight from the horse's mouth. Don't believe me.
Yep.
Because I'm just one of those conspiracy theorists. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Go read his book. Go watch his videos at the World Economic Forum website. And he talks about how COVID presents a narrow window of opportunity for them to get their agenda through. And what do they talk about? Bill Gates talks about this as well. Fundamentally changing our way of life. Mm-hmm. Kamala Harris just said it yesterday, the vice president. She said that as we move beyond COVID, she said, we have an opportunity to change, to transform. That was the word she used. The way we live, the way we work, and the way there was a third thing I don't remember. I wish I had it in front of me, but she just said it yesterday. She echoed the talking points of the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset. And it was all based on COVID. So it's not us, it's not me, this is their words. And the only way to fight back and win is starting at the local level. People need to take back their communities, take back their school boards, their city councils, their county commissions. And also, I advise people to get to know your neighbors again, okay? Mm-hmm. Don't live in this virtual world that they want you to live on, where you just communicate with people online and through Facebook and in forums and whatnot. Actually engage with your neighbors. Find out which ones of them are like-minded thinkers and which ones are not. That information might come in handy, and quite soon.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Where can people connect with you? How do they get Stealth Invasion? Is Stealth Invasion a prophecy? You wrote that years ago.
No. It's a. Yeah, oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, right. It turned out to be right.
Yeah.
But it's actually relevant again because it was mostly about our broken immigration system, which was largely fixed under the Trump administration. Not totally, but largely.
Yeah.
And so the book was ill-timed. I think everyone thought Hillary was going to be elected and this book would be a well-timed book, but it came out just as Trump was taking office. We didn't know he would be elected when I wrote the book, because it went to press in right before the 2016 election. But anyway, it is totally relevant again. It's about the stealth invasion of the not just illegal immigration with the open borders that the globalists are trying to are actually implementing. And so it's not just about those coming across that border illegally, but about the legal immigration systems, which are just devastating. I mean, they're undercutting our workers. They're bringing in people on H-1B, H-2B visas. They're bringing in people on religious visas who hate America. You know, these imams. Most people don't know that 75-80% of the imams in America are foreign born and are imported through our corrupt immigration system. They come in on the religious visas.
Right.
And so there's just all examples throughout the book in actual communities throughout America of how this broken immigration system is devastating our local communities, cities, and states.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to pick it up. I haven't had a chance to
But
read
it's
it
not
yet.
just about immigration. Really, generally, the book is about the devastating impacts of globalism. It talks about our education system. It talks about Agenda 2030. It talks about the Strong Cities Initiative, which is a plan by the United Nations to globalize law enforcement.
Yes.
All these things are in there.
And as you get connected to your community, it's so important to watch for that language.
Yes.
Right? Because they use very specific language when they're talking about these strong cities and the UN agenda.
They do. If you don't understand the vernacular of the New World Order, you're not going to understand when it comes to your community. One of the words, just I know we need to close, but just an example of that in the field of education, a key buzzword for them that sounds good to people if you're not familiar with their agenda, the UN agenda, they use this word equity.
Yes.
And the word equity to the untrained ear sounds good because we equate that with what? Equality.
Yeah.
But equity and equality are completely two different things.
Yes.
Under equality, you treat everybody the same.
Yes.
Under a system of equity, you treat people differently based on their skin color, their gender, their sexual identity, and whatever other, identity politics type of thing you want to attach to it.
Yes, I think we're living in inverted times. I know a lot of people I follow continue to say that, and I couldn't agree more.
Everything is upside
inverted.
down.
Yes,
it's upside down.
So, like, did you see that
my wife actually had a dream a couple months ago that I thought was probably from God. I don't remember all the details of it, but basically the long story short, she was in some room or some church, and all the crosses were upside down.
Wow.
And she would continuously turn the crosses back right, and then Satan would come in and turn them upside down. Oof. And everywhere she walked throughout this building, it was just upside down crosses. Wow. And I really think that was some kind of just a message to her of what you're saying. We are now living in an era of humanity on this earth where right is wrong and wrong is right, and everything is flipped.
Yep. And when you're using discernment, that's a great tool to know.
Yes.
Right? So what is the flip side of this? Like Chicago's health advisor, I think, just came out and said that she wasn't going to take interviews from any white people anymore.
Right. I saw that. Lori Lightfoot.
So that is racism.
Yes.
So
if that's not racism, equity, I don't know what is. Yeah.
You are creating systemic racism.
And have you seen what they've done to Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer in the Air Force?
No.
He came out and criticized the military for this critical race theory that they're embedding in all the training programs for our military men and women.
Okay.
He wrote a book on it, and so he's an expert on early warning systems in the early warning space systems. He's a very young, very intelligent young man, looks to be maybe in his early 30s. They have relieved him of his command.
Yeah.
Because he blew the whistle on how they are teaching our servicemen and women to hate the U.S. Constitution, the very document that they swear an oath to protect against enemies, foreign and domestic. They're saying that the Constitution is a racist, systemically racist document that set the stage for a racist country. That's what they're being taught now in the U.S. military.
Yeah, I've talked to constitutional lawyer Chrisanne Hall, and she thinks
she's good.
They're coming after the Constitution. That's exactly
like I said earlier in this podcast. They are coming after all of us.
Yeah.
If you stand for freedom, you stand for the Constitution, you are going to be spotlighted somehow, and you're going to be spotlighted as one of the ones who are, not the favored ones, to put it nicely.
Yes.
But we need to make that stand. If not now, when?
If you
If not,
don't, you're
if
going to
not
lose
us,
anyway.
I always like to close saying, if not now, when? If not us, who?
Absolutely. Where can people read your next article?
My website is leohohmann.com. That's LeoHohmann.com.
Yes. Are you working on anything right now to post?
I will be focusing more, I think, in the coming days on the vaccine issue, because like I said earlier, I think that is probably the most immediate threat. But I did have an article just most recently on 124 retired senior military officers who penned an open letter to America warning that we are in, quote, grave or deep peril of losing this country, this republic, to Marxism. And so that is the top story on my site right now. And I have a link to the letter. I advise everyone to read it. And just also click the follow button, and you'll get an email every time I post a new article at leohohmann.com.
Absolutely. I want to thank you so much for the work that you're doing. We'll continue to feature all of your articles on the Naturally Inspired daily video that we do.
Thank you.
So all our community can see the truth and what the work that you're doing. I'm encouraged that you have, did you tell me 1 million views on
one particular article that came out about 3 weeks ago now? It's still getting reads.
Yes.
It just went completely viral. It was focusing on Dr. Peter McCullough's message about how the federal government is covering up the adverse events, health problems, and deaths being caused by this so-called COVID vaccine.
Yeah, so I would encourage everyone to go to his website and read it if you have not seen it already, because it is a very powerful article and a good tool for your arsenal when you're talking to other people, right? Because if we're going to call people out to stand on the truth, well, then you got to start doing your research and you got to start having tools in your arsenal, because people are going to want to know why you're thinking the way you're thinking. Perfect.
Right. It's really, my logo is, or my slogan, I guess I should say, is leohohmann.com, news and analysis for such a time as this. So I try to present news, and then usually a lot of times the first half of my article will just be sort of what happened. And then the second half, I will analyze it and say, this is what I see happening here. And then even going beyond that, many times, what can we do to try to alleviate this situation?
Right. Perfect. Thank you so much, Leo, for being with me today. This was such a great interview. I enjoyed talking with you, and it's just comforting to know there's more people out there that are thinking.
That is another big thing what people need to know. You are not alone. You are not alone. We are the majority. It's time we stop being the silent majority.
Yes, that's so true. Thank you so much, Leo.
Thank you so much, Tammy. My pleasure.
If the naturally inspired movement makes sense to you, let's do this together and transform the medical model and help people take charge of their health. Learn more about how you can join the naturally inspired movement by going to naturallyinspiredadvocate.com or call me at 970-475-4862.